This event is part of the series with the Creative Feast, focusing on food and its impact on healthy living. AARP has been promoting the health and well-being of older Americans for over 60 years. Here in New Hampshire, we strive to bring you informative, innovative, and fun virtual events like today's online cook-along demonstration as a means of connection and inclusion. AARP has numerous healthy living resources on its website, which include staying fit, wellness, and longevity, information on healthy eating, as well as staying sharp. There's something for everyone. So we'll put a link in the chat for you. Chef Liz built her cooking career in various Boston catering and restaurant venues. After starting her family, she re-entered the food world as a cooking instructor and developed Liz Barber's Creative Feast. Chef Liz has appeared on New Hampshire's WMUR, Cook's Corner. Her cooking demonstrations and recipes in herb gardens have been featured in various publications, including Where Women Cook, New Hampshire Magazine, the Nashua Telegraph, and the Hippo Press. All her programs focus on the premise that we are healthier when we cook at home. We hope you enjoyed today's program. And here's Liz.
Great. Thank you so much, Frances. And welcome everybody to my studio kitchen here in Hollis, New Hampshire. And today's class, 20-minute meals, is going to be very, of course, we're going to go the full hour, but our recipes take about 20 minutes. Now, I did take a little bit of liberty with one of our recipes, the Dutch baby. It requires baking and getting your oven hot with your pan. So just to get us ahead, I'm going to put my pan in the oven. Then I'm going to take you to the website to show you the recipes. So if you are cooking along with me, let's just do this one thing first. Get your oven up to 425 degrees, pop, and you can heat your pan in the oven while it's heating up. I am using a cast iron pan, measures 10 inches across. This is going into the oven right now while my oven is preheating. So that will go in there. Oops, looks like my husband popped another pan in there. So I'm going to take that out, pop this in, and then we're going to go right back to the website. And you'll know in just a minute why it's really important to get that pan hot. Now, it could be a cast iron pan, a stainless steel pan, as long as it can take temperatures of up to 425 degrees. Okay, let's go back to our regular introduction where I take you to my website. And there you are going to find our recipes. I'm going to show you where to find them. So this is my website, thecreativefeast.com. And you can see across the top everywhere that you can go. If you want to share my programs with other organizations, I'm now doing just in-person lecture programs at this point, but you can share information with your local libraries, etc. if you are in the Massachusetts, New Hampshire area. If you want to go to my recipe blog, you'll find it under Food and Fun. And then there I've created a special page for AARP. And here are your recipes, AARP 2024 Cook-Along classes. So if you go there, you're going to see all the classes we've already done for 2024. And then you're just going to scroll down to our class for this afternoon, which is the 20-minute recipes for summer nights. So here is our garlic steamed clams and our Dutch baby with summer fruit. So those are there for you. You can also look back at what we did last year in 2023 by clicking on this link, and that will give you all of the recipes there as well. So that's available to you. For my all of my recipes, just click on the recipe blog, and there you're going to see all of the recipes that I've been doing over the years. Of course, there are many categories for you, so you can check that out. There's so many there for you to enjoy. If you continue on down, you'll see intermittent fasting is something I'm very passionate about. I've been doing it for about 8 years and been very happy. Both my husband and I do it. So you can look at that. You can look at my low carb information if you want to begin to do a low carb lifestyle. I highly recommend that as a tool in your toolbox. And then, of course, you can check out my chickens. We have a wonderful chicken run here that goes all around our property, so you can check that out and see how we made it. All of the information is there. And a lot of you may already know me for my edible gardens. So you can click on my edible gardens and you can take a virtual tour through the gardens with some pictures that I've taken over the years. So all of that information is there for you. And right now it's time to get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on we're going to start on the Dutch baby. So I'm going to take all of the ingredients for our steamed clams away so that we can focus on our Dutch baby and getting that in the oven. I have some edible flowers that we'll be garnishing our plate with later, and some fresh fruit from my local farm that we're going to feature on the Dutch baby. You can choose whatever fruit that you want. And then we have our ingredients. Now I'm just going to bring up on my computer, I'm going to take a look at my ingredients just so I don't leave anything out. And I always have assistants in the audience that help me if I do forget something. So this is a super easy recipe to put together. Now, again, we're preheating our oven to 425 degrees. And then we've got our pan preheating in that. So what is a Dutch baby? A Dutch baby is kind of like, it's like a pancake, but it's very thin. And it cooks completely in the oven, and it actually cooks and rises in the oven similar to a souffle. So you're going to get a lot of puff out of this. And Dutch babies can be made sweet or savory. They're very easy to alter the ingredients. So in this case, we're doing a Dutch baby batter that doesn't have any sugar in it, but you are welcome to add like a teaspoon or two of sugar if you'd like to. But if you're going to go on the savory side, when I make the basic batter, I could also add chopped herbs to it. I could add a little bit of Parmesan cheese to it. So you can really adapt it that way. But it's also really kind of like a base for whatever it is that you're going to serve with it. So if I wanted, again, to do a savory Dutch baby, I could leave my batter as it is. There is no added sugar to it. And once it comes out of the oven, then I could add cooked seafood and a cream sauce, or I could add, roasted tomatoes. We've got summer tomatoes ready to be harvested pretty soon. So those could go there, or sauteed summer vegetables, and they could go right on top of the Dutch baby, and you can serve it as that savory, almost like a main course or an appetizer. We're focusing on the dessert aspect. But again, I'm just going to show you a basic recipe for it. We're going to be adding cinnamon and vanilla to it. So again, if you're doing savory, you might want to leave those two ingredients out. We get our pan hot so that the puffing and the cooking happens that much faster. We're going to be putting butter in the pan right before we put our batter in. So you want to have your butter ready. So we're going to start with getting our batter ready. Super easy. You're going to have a bowl and you're going to have a whisk. And we're going to add our ingredients. We've got our flour. We've got about, what do I have here? A half a cup of flour. And then I have a little bit of salt. We're going to add that in and stir them together so that you don't have one spot that is over salty. Then we're going to add in our cinnamon. Okay, and you just want to mix that up evenly. And then we have our eggs at room temperature, and that's really important because that is going to affect how this rises. It's going to give that puffiness. If you're using eggs that are cold, they are going to alter the cooking in this, and you may not get that nice puffy finish that you're looking for. These are my farm fresh eggs. So I'm just going to pop those right in. Francis, do we have any questions before I continue on?
Not at this time.
Perfect. This is such an easy recipe. And again, it's so versatile so far as sweet or savory. And then of course your fruit toppings, if you're going sweet, can be anything that is in season. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my vanilla here. And we're just going to mix this together. Get those eggs broken up. And then we have our room temperature milk. Again, using room temperature is going to be really important for the cooking process of this so that it all comes together. So we're going to take that milk and we're going to add that in. Make sure, I'm just going to get a little spatula. Make sure you get all of that milk out of there. You do want to use a whole milk. The fat is going to make a difference in your recipe. So you want to use whole milk here. And then just mix this up. Just trying to get, if there are any lumps, try to get those out. Very simple.
So
And
Liz,
then,
we did have
yep.
a question about the milk. If you're lactose intolerant, what would you use instead? Maybe almond milk?
You know what? I am not, I did not look into that, but if you have a milk alternative, that would probably be a good idea to give that a try. A really good alternative would be coconut milk out of the can. Now, coconut milk, full fat coconut milk is going to have the fat that you need to bring this together. So you might want to try that and see how that works for you. People who want to do a keto diet or something and they're not doing dairy, coconut milk is often a nice substitute, and you can give that a try.
And we also
right.
had the question of how long does it take the eggs to get to room temperature?
Oh, that's a really good question. So that I don't know the exact answer because of course it matters, you know, how big the eggs are, etc. But and what the temperature of your room is. But if you've forgotten to do that, take them out. What I do is I immediately crack the eggs and put them into a shallow bowl. And that way there's more of the egg exposed to the air, so they will come to room temperature faster. So if that is an issue for you, go ahead and put them into a bowl, and you're just going to touch it, and it's going to be to the touch. But you don't want to put them in the microwave because then you could cook them. You don't want to heat your milk and pour it on because that could cook them. Milk is a little bit easier because you can put it into the microwave for 30 seconds and warm it up very slowly. I would worry about doing that with your eggs though.
And one other question was, instead of using the whisk, can you use a blender?
You can, yeah, whatever works for you. I use the whisk because then I don't have to pull out the blender. It doesn't matter. You're not trying to whip this up in any fashion. You're just trying to blend it. It's a very loose batter, almost like a crepe batter. Okay. So that's how loose it is. All right. Now what I'm going to do is my oven is almost preheated. And once it's preheated, I'm going to then take out my pan and going to drop in my butter. But for the moment, I'm just going to set my batter aside with my butter. Again, just so I can allow my oven to come to room temp up to temperature, 425 degrees. And we're going to start to get our fruit ready for the top of the Dutch baby. So what I have here is I actually have raspberry plants in my garden, so raspberry canes. So I went out and I picked some fresh raspberries this morning. My local farm stand here in Hollis, New Hampshire, Low Farm, they have their peaches. I would caution you, now these are stone, these are not freestone peaches, so when you cut them, the pit doesn't come right off. So I just cut through and then I'm gonna cut them. Now you may want to, if you like to peel yours, you can do that. I like to eat the whole peach. But I do suggest that when you go to buy your peaches, give yourself a couple of days. These have been sitting for a few days because we're really early in the season. So most of the peaches that are there at the farm stand are not quite ripe, which is just fine. Sitting out on the counter at room temperature for 2 days ripens them up beautifully. So these are really delicious. And they're just the first peach I've had all season, because I don't like to buy my fruit out of season if I can avoid it. Certainly in New England, that's a problem, but we do have a lot of apples, and we have local apple growers here that can store their apples in such a way that when they open the storage, it's almost as if they are freshly picked. All right, so there is one of our peaches, and now we're going to go ahead. So I'm going to add one more peach, but because my oven is up to temperature, I'm going to come over to the stove and we're going to drop our butter in our pan. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. Remember, my pan has been in the oven, and I'm going to go ahead and drop this right in, and you can see it's melting right away. I'm going to pop it back into the oven, give it a minute or so that completely melts, and then we're going to go ahead and add our Dutch baby batter to that. Now here's another way you could trim this, is trim it around like this, and then come down, and then I've got it into these wonderful little pieces. Now the freestone peaches are the ones that I love because I can just pull them apart and they'll come right off the pit. But there is nothing better than fresh fruit. Right now in New England, we're picking blueberries. That just started about a week or two ago. And so I try to get there early in the morning and pick blueberries, and I will freeze them for the year to come. I'm also still picking rhubarb, and I will pick that all throughout the summer. And so that is a fantastic, easy, perennial fruit to do here in New England. Actually, I don't even think it's categorized as a fruit, but we certainly do serve it as a fruit. So I've got my fruit here. If you want to sugar your fruit, you can do that. I'm going to be using maple syrup that we got from our own trees back in March. I do have some sour cream because I like to, myself, I prefer sour cream. This is a Greek style sour cream, so nice and thick, but you could use plain yogurt if you like. You can use cottage cheese if you like, anything like that. Even whipped cream if that's what you prefer, or ice cream if you would like. All right, let's pull out our pan. So I've got a nice bubbly butter going there. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this really quickly, drop it all into our pan, get all of that batter out, and then immediately pop this right into the oven, okay? And that's it. That's how simple this is. I'm gonna go ahead and set my timer. Now I'm gonna set it, the recipe calls for 20 minutes. I'm going to set it for 15. My oven runs a little bit hot. And then I'm going to take a look at it. What I'm looking for is that it is puffy and lightly browned. And then you can, if it's still a little jiggly in the center, you can turn off the oven and let it sit for another 5 minutes, and then it'll be perfect. So we'll come back to that in about 20 minutes. Now let's move on to our next dish, which is our clams. We're going to do a simple clam, and I love this idea. Of course, we're here in New England, so we have a wonderful selection of seafood here. This dish, I'm going to be focusing on the clams. These are little neck clams. You do not want to get steamers. That's a classic New England type of clam, you know, where the neck comes out, and what you do is you steam those and then you take them out of the shell and you pull that little bit of skin off of the neck of the clam and dip it in butter. Those you don't want to use because their bellies are too full. They're going to add a whole different flavor. You want to be using the little neck clams, or you can use what are called mahogany clams. So they're going to be a nice dark brown if you prefer to use those, depending on what's available. The problem with shopping on Monday, which is when I picked these up yesterday, is that they don't always have their seafood replenished at the time that I go in. So what I did was, as a backup, I went ahead and I got myself some mussels. I love mussels. So last night when I prepared this dish, I actually prepared it using mussels and it was delicious. Now, what if you don't like clams and you don't like mussels? You could certainly use shrimp, raw shrimp already peeled and deveined, and you can prepare this very similarly. It will just take another minute or so to cook it with shrimp, and then you can finish it up the same way. You could use scallops if you want. You could use pieces of swordfish, for example. Just cut them on the small side so that they cook in that 2 to 3 minute period of time. And then you could use swordfish, and then you'd be serving that in a garlic butter sauce. So it's very versatile and really simple to do. But one of the first steps is I do want to cook some bread, and I'm going to show you how to do that because you're going to enjoy serving that. So I'm just heating up my cast iron pan here over a medium-high heat. And at the same time, I am going to serve this with a side of buttered pasta. So you're going to look at this pan here and you see that that is a stainless steel straight-sided saute pan. And I am going to cook my pasta in that. And you're going to think, why is she not using a big kettle of water and cooking it in that? And the reason is that when you're preparing a dish that can then be, it will be served over pasta. Have you ever read a recipe where it says, and set aside some of the pasta water to add to your sauce? Well, we are creating pasta water that has a lot of starch in it. And that's one of the advantages of using the pasta water in your dish, because the starch will help to thicken the dish. So I'm sharing with you a little tip that you could use in the future. You could use it this time. But when you cook your pasta, you don't have to cook it in a large container of water, as long as you are checking it and frequently stirring it so it doesn't stick together. I specifically have moved myself to cooking in a lot less water. I will flavor the water with salt. Okay, so you're going to use a good, tablespoon of salt. This has got about an inch of water in there for that size of the pan. I'm going to put a lid on top, and that will help bring it to the boil. I am only going to use a half a pound here, but my dish is going to serve 2 of us because I don't like to have a pasta heavy diet. So I go very light and let the flavor of the sauce that I'm preparing be the real shining star of that particular meal rather than the pasta. Pasta is extremely high in carbohydrates. This is my pasta of choice. It's the Di Cecco. So I really prefer this one. And if you look on the back of your pasta, which you all should be doing if you are pasta eaters, is you want to look at how many carbohydrates in the serving. So let me tell you that this package, 1 pound of pasta, they consider this to be 8 servings. So for every serving, there's 40 grams of carbohydrates. Now, if you are somebody that is looking to cut down on carbohydrates in your diet, which we all should, and including, these highly processed carbohydrates, which include anything that have flour in it, you're going to want to look at the nutritional facts on the back of the package and consider that. So I've shifted my pasta loving to sauce loving with a little bit of pasta, and then I only have pasta occasionally. That's how I choose to enjoy. Now, of course, I'm going to go ahead and contradict myself because I am going to do bread. Now, I prefer bread over pasta. So here, what I want to do is I've got my pan heating up. I'm going to show you, I'm going to fry my bread. I'm just going to put some olive oil on the bread. Okay. And then we're going to put it in the pan and just let it toast up. Now, you could actually toast this in the toaster if you wanted to. You could toast it in the broiler if you wanted. I wouldn't put oil on it if you're going to toast it in the toaster though, because that could cause some issues for your toaster down the line. But I've just placed some olive oil on there, and that is heating up. I'm going to keep my eye on it. And you can even add just a little bit of salt to that if you like. Okay. And all I'm looking to do is to brown that, and that's for serving. It's entirely up to you. Francis, do we have any questions before we go on?
The only question I had was the eggs that you put into the baby, and they were wondering, should you beat the eggs before putting them in the batter, and if not, why?
Well, I'm just checking on my bread. I don't do it in this case because it's not going to affect the batter. I'm not looking to create any loss with that. And I didn't overbeat. So it's just very quickly, it mixes in nicely. And then as long as you don't have any big lumps in it, it should be just fine. It's a nice time saver, isn't it? And it also saves a bowl. So read through your recipe to understand, well, why would I beat that? If part of the recipe was to create a loft by having really well beaten eggs, that would be an issue. But in this case, the loft of this is coming from being in the oven and the number of eggs in the recipe. Okay. All right. Now we've got some color coming here. And all I'm doing is just toasting my bread. Now I've got my pasta water has come to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and drop my pasta in now while that's come to the boil, because the pasta, I've got a thin spaghetti. You could do, if you're going to do a angel hair, it will take less time the thinner your pasta is. I'm going to drop that right in and then just give it a little stir. And I'm going to check on this every once in a while. You're going to see me come over just to make sure that I've stirred it up a little bit, but I do want to cover that. Okay. And there we have our bread, just waiting for that to get a little bit brown, a little bit more crispy. All right, let's go ahead and look at our clams. It is important before you use your shellfish that you take it, put it into a bowl of cool water. I have a nail brush here that I like to use. All I'm doing is getting off any dirt that may have come with these, extra, gritty salt or anything like that, and just getting these off, because if you don't do that, if you don't clean that off, it's going to get into your dish. So even if you were cooking a different dish and using steamers or oysters or whatever, you make sure that you have cleaned it off. And then I'm just going to rinse those, and there is a little bit of sand there, so I did a good thing to rinse those off. One more time. Oops, lost one in the dish, and there we go. Okay, so there are our clams. They're going to be ready to go. I'm actually going to put them over by the stove because we're going to add them at that time when it comes time to putting those in. And I'm almost done with my bread. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to prepare, get everything ready for the aromatics in this dish. So we do have, the recipe calls for shallots, but again, my grocery store, oddly enough, did not have the shallots. So I'm going to use red onion, which is very mild. You could use a regular white onion, just, use just a quarter of the onion. You don't have to use a lot. It's just going to add a little bit of extra flavor. And let's take a look here. Look at that. That's perfect. This is working beautifully. And I'm going to go ahead and take my bread off because I don't want to take the chance of overcooking it. And I'm going to let it sit on the stove and be nice and crisp. And I'm just going to move my pan off the heat right now, just so it doesn't overheat for when it's time to put our ingredients in. So we have our shallot, and you can do this a couple of ways. You can chop this really fine if you like, or you can slice this nice and thin. So I'm going to slice it nice and thin. Just make sure that you know, each of your pieces are the same thickness, and your knife is nice and sharp. So I cut down to the root without going through, and then I'll just go back and cut that root right off. And then I have my onion all sliced, so that's perfect. And then we're going to get our garlic all set. So just smack that garlic. Now is the time here we're harvesting garlic, so that's really wonderful. Mine is just starting to cure, so that means it's sitting, it's come out of the ground. I've cleaned them off just by brushing the dirt off, and now they're sitting on trays that are letting air circulate around them so they get nice and dry, and then it'll be time to store them for later use, and hopefully I'll get, you know, a good couple 6 months or so of my own garlic, along with saving some of the garlic heads so that I can plant them in the fall then for next summer. So it's a really great process and super easy to do, and it's one of those little things that you can do yourself. All right, I'm going to slice my garlic. Let's just slice it nice and thin, keep that easy. Take our garlic cloves and just give it a nice slice. You could also mince this if you want. There we go. Okay, so we have our onions, our garlic, and we're pretty much all set to go over to the stove. I also have wine. We're going to use about a half a cup of white wine. Now I'm using dry sherry. I didn't want to open up a bottle of wine, but dry sherry is a wonderful alternative and gives it just such a rich flavor. So if you are somebody that keeps, I always keep dry sherry to cook with. And it doesn't have to be, you can keep it in your pantry for a few months and that would be fine as long as it's in a cool, dark place. Another alcohol that you can use if you don't have white wine is dry vermouth, is another fortified wine that you can use for cooking. If you are using white wine, it depends if you like a dry wine, a Chardonnay. Sauvignon Blanc is a really good, even middle of the road wine to use. So that would be a good choice. You just don't want a sweet wine that will totally turn this dish into a whole different direction. All right, let's go on over. I've got my butter. Our pan is ready to go. I also have over here some red pepper flakes that I'm going to add in. I'm going to get our pan heated over a medium flame, add my butter in, and then add my onion and my garlic. Again, we're just going to add those so that we'll get them nice and soft. It should take a minute or two. We do want to soften those up. That was my timer for my Dutch baby. So I'm going to let these soften up. The timer couldn't have gone off more perfectly. And let's go in and grab our Dutch baby out of the oven and take a peek. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to call it at 15 minutes. And I want you to see how gorgeous that is. So you can see how beautiful that is. That is perfectly cooked. Again, my oven runs a little hot, which is why I'm doing it at 15 minutes. I'm going to turn off the oven, pop this in for 5 minutes just to let it rest. I wanted you to see it at its full height. Actually, let's just bring it to the side so you can see how much that rose over the top. It's really quite beautiful. back into the oven. Just let it rest in that oven. It'll set it right up for about 5 minutes. Gonna take my pasta, lid off. Check this out. This is almost, I would say, another 4 minutes on our pasta. But do you see how, I don't know if you can see that this water is actually very thick with starch. And so if I'm going to turn this into a full blown pasta dish, this water is going to be perfect to add to our dish. I'm going to serve it on the side, but you can certainly do anything that you'd like in that area. All right. Now, our garlic is starting to brown. Our onions are starting to soften. I can smell the aromatics from those. It really smells so good. I'm going to add in a little bit of crushed red pepper, just a pinch, and a pinch of salt. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and take our wine and we're going to drop that in. Okay, you want to make sure again that your onions have started to soften, your garlic has just started to brown, and then in goes your wine. I'm going to cook that for about a minute. That's going to cook off the alcohol. It's going to reduce the wine a little bit to allow to give it a more intense flavor. Okay, so we want to do that. And then we're going to add in our clams. And then what's going to happen is you're going to look at this and you say, gee, that's not a lot of sauce. But remember that once your clams open up, out will come the seawater that they're holding tight inside. And that is going to add another element of flavor to your dish. Francis, do we have any questions before we go on?
We just had a question about the pan size for the pasta. They were wondering what size pan that was.
Oh, okay. I always use 12-inch pans, right? This is a 12-inch pan. This is a 12-inch pan. I just find that when you're cooking, for 2 or 4, that's the size to go. Okay, in go our clams. On go the lid. Okay, and we're gonna let that cook. We've got about 2 minutes on the timer for the end of our Dutch baby, so that will give us a good amount of time. So yeah, the 12-inch, and that's, I'm so glad that you asked that, because certainly if you use a smaller pan, you may have to break your pasta. So I did not want to break the pasta. So that's, again, another reason to use a 12-inch pan. But I got to tell you, I just find them to be the most versatile. If I have a recipe, I rarely have a recipe for a 10-inch pan, but my the cast iron pan that I have, the Dutch baby, it's called a number 8. It happens to be 10 inches across the top, so it was absolutely all right. And we're going to go ahead and cut some lemon for our dish so that we have that ready. And I'm going to cut a little bit of parsley, but we are really almost ready here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my Dutch baby and reset my timer just for my clams. Oh, this is so beautiful. I'm just so glad that this came out so nicely. When I prepared this, the week in advance, I always redo my recipes to make sure they come out okay. And I realized that my my oven has somehow recalibrated itself, which happens to many of our ovens. They just aren't the right temperature. So it's important to have a temperature gauge that you can leave in your oven and you can test it every once in a while. And what I discovered was that this was just a little bit, running a little bit hot. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our berries to this. This is going to be too pretty to eat. You could serve it hot, room temperature, however you want. I'm going to prepare it for you nice and hot. This would be a lovely dish to serve also at room temperature, but I think hot, it just gives it that really, I don't know, it just makes it exciting to have it come right out of the oven and finished up. All right, I'm gonna turn off my pasta. I've actually absorbed all of the water in there, so that's okay. I would add a little bit more back into that if you were going to serve that as a pasta dish. Okay, so now we're going to take, I'm just going to use sour cream, and you can dab it all over however much you want to use. If I were serving this with guests, I absolutely would use a little bit more. And then I'm going to add into that my homemade maple syrup. My husband, this is his thing. So, and there goes, that's my clam. So let's just pour this over. Oh my goodness, that looks so delicious. All right, let me turn this off. We're back at the stove. And let's see, when you lift, make sure you lift away from your face. And look at that, all of my clams, with the exception of one, that's almost, there we go, it's almost open. I'm gonna let this go just another minute, just to get that one finally open. If you have a clam that absolutely will not open, toss it, okay? Sometimes they're just, you know, a little bit beyond. And if it hasn't opened, then it hasn't released anything into the pan. But there is our gorgeous Dutch baby. Let's chop up some fresh parsley to add to our other dish. Now, in my pasta, I'm going to, because it is a buttered pasta, so I've got some butter in the refrigerator that I'm going to grab, and I'm going to add this to the pasta itself, so we can serve that with. And then I personally love crushed black pepper, so I'm going to add that to this. That up. And there we go. And then we're going to get ready to serve both of these together. Francis, do we have any other questions on this dish?
No, we do not.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, we have really done a great job. I've recovered on the 20-minute promise, right? Because we're just over getting on to 45 minutes, and we have 2 dishes. Although you do need to account for the idea that you're going to be preheating your oven for your Dutch baby. All right, now I've given this plenty of time, and there is my clams. This is just gorgeous. Now, if you wanted to serve this with a little bit of chopped bacon, you want to cook the bacon first, take it out of the pan, and let the bacon fat be the fat in this. If you're doing andouille sausage, cut that up, saute that first with a little bit of olive oil, and then add in your onions and your garlic, and then you can cook on with that. When I do the bacon, I like to cook up the bacon, take it out, and then add it at the end so it stays a little bit on the crispy side, but that's just me, so it's entirely up to you. Now, let's finish this off. We're gonna go ahead and add our parsley to this and stir that up a little. Now, another thing that I added last night just to add a little bit of color was some regular sliced red pepper. I added it when I cooked my onions. So you can add color to this if you like. So that might be something you'd be interested in. Now, let's go ahead and serve this. I'm going to serve it with my buttered pasta. So let's take a little bit of that out. Okay, so that has plenty of butter in it. Just really beautifully done. Just a little bit. And then this is how we would plate this in the restaurant so that you can see how to do that. Always put your clams first and put them so they are sitting with the clam facing to the outside of the bowl, and that way, wherever you set it down, whoever you're giving it to gets to see your clams. Now, this is technically for 2 people, but I'll tell you, I'm going to be happy to be eating this for my lunch all by myself. This is one of those summer dishes that I can't wait for. Yes, of course, we could have it at any time of year, but to me, it just seems like one of those perfect seasonal dishes. And now you can see how quickly you can make this, and how easy that is. Now look at this, beautiful, all of our vegetables, aromatics right in the middle, and then this wonderful broth goes around the edge. This is a perfect, lovely New England dish, but you can do this from any part of the country that you're in. And certainly in different parts of the country, you're going to have different kinds of clams that are available to you. Here we have our bread. We're going to take this, chop that on an angle, just like they would in the restaurant. Super easy. Put that right there on the side with your toast points up. There we go. This is the perfect dish. Now, just to finish that off, I'm going to add a little bit of lemon, like that. And I'm even going to add a little lemon to this because I love lemon. I think it really brings out a lot in fruit as well. All right, Francis, we actually finished a little bit early this afternoon, but that's what happens when you're cooking a quick 20-minute meals. Now, we do have some time if there are any questions that anybody has about cooking that don't necessarily have to do with our class today. I'd be happy to take the time to answer them.
Well, we did have a question about the parsley. Do you keep it in the fridge or do you keep it on your counter?
Good question. I'm actually going to turn off my cameras here. You can undo my stove camera if you want to take that off. That'll give more room for the other. Yeah, good question. I only did it to have for you. I always keep my herbs in the refrigerator. It will keep them fresher longer. Basically, what you want to do, let me see if I can tip this camera up a little bit for you. There we go. What I like to do is have my herbs in a Ziploc bag and press all of the air out of the bag, and then put them in the refrigerator. Another thing that I caution people against is rushing. Oops, I don't know what happened here. Let me, seems to have gone off of my device. Let's see. Oh, I know. I think I moved my computer just a little bit. Let's see if that will search for a device. We'll get that back on so you can see. When people come home with their herbs and they wash them and put them in the refrigerator, if they are wet, they will deteriorate that much quicker. So I do recommend that people go ahead and don't necessarily wash them as you go. Okay. Let me just see what happened here. I'm going to reconnect and see what's going on. There we go. Sometimes you just have to start over again. Any other questions, Francis?
We did have the question of, you talked about edible flowers. Are you going to add them to the recipe?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I am a big fan of calendula. So this is it's a different kind of marigold, but one thing that you can do with your flowers is just pull the petals off. Now, calendula doesn't have a lot of flavor to it, so that's a really nice one to add. And of course, another favorite of mine is the bachelor button. And so this one, I'm just going to move these a little bit more, I thought would be real pretty here. And that just really makes that orange pop. from the peaches. Of course, all roses are edible, so you could add rose petals to that if you want. And then another thing too is, depending on your herb flowers, what's available right now, anise hyssop is in flower. That has some a minty flavor, but it also has a little bit of a licoricey flavor, which you might like. That also, I'm going to put that on here because I find that a licoricey flavor will remind me of fennel, which reminds me again of an alternative for this. You could use onions and fennel in this, and it would be so wonderful. Slice your fennel nice and thin, cook it at the same time that you're cooking your onions and your garlic, and then finish it with the wine, and that would be a fabulous dish. Any other questions?
We have a couple more.
Okay.
So what's an alternative to wine? I know in your recipe you said water. Was there anything else?
You could also use if you happen to have a fish broth, a good canned fish broth. If you're making, here's one thing that I do. If I'm going to be cooking shrimp, for example, I will take the shells off the shrimp and put them in my freezer. And then I can make a really quick shrimp stock by simply taking the shrimp and covering it in water, simmering it with a little bit of salt and pepper, maybe some garlic. And then I'll have a shrimp broth that you could use. If you are okay with using a chicken stock, you could use that as well. I suggested water just because then you could season it with more salt and pepper, which is really what a lot of these broths do. They have a lot of salt. You may add some aromatics to that. You could add some thyme to that. So it's really, something you could try. You could steam it in milk if you wanted to, and then you would have almost like a chowdery finish. So that might be something you'd like to try. So there's really endless possibilities.
A lot of
Or that
alternatives.
coconut milk. Yeah,
Yeah.
that coconut milk might be nice. And then you could even add a little bit of curry, and then you could take it in a coconut curry direction.
And we had gas stove or electric stove?
My stove is a dual oven, dual range. So the ovens are electric and the stove top is gas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have any other questions.
All right. Well, great. Well,
they're all saying great job. They love
Thank
the
you.
recipes. And if they didn't cook along with you, they can't wait to try them.
It's
So
super easy.
let me do my ending and say
Okay.
thank you, Liz, for this wonderful cook along demonstration. We can't wait to try these recipes. Today's cook along demonstration is one of many upcoming virtual event offerings provided by AARP New Hampshire. Please visit aarp.org/New Hampshire to learn of our other virtual events, which include gentle yoga and educational webinars. If you're interested in volunteering for the AARP New Hampshire community, contact us at nhaarp@aarp.org. And our next cook along demonstration will be with Liz on Tuesday, August the 20th at 2 o'clock. She will show how to build a better sandwich. And of course, you can register for this class at www.aarp.org/NH. So thanks for joining us. Have a rest of your day. Hope it's wonderful. And thanks for cooking these delicious meals for us, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next month.
Yeah.